So this video is for anybody who is in rented accommodation and maybe has a little bit of fear with the eviction ban lifting and is still considering their financial means in terms of how they're going to pay rent. So if that is you, please watch this video. Our previous video covered notice periods in general and how to calculate notice periods. But just to recap and throw in some specifics of this current eviction ban and the dates of when it's lifted and what that might mean for your tenancy. So the current eviction ban lifted, well, the previous eviction ban or our last one finished on the 12th of April. There was a 10-day grace period applied from that point, meaning the earliest tenants could be evicted was the 23rd of April. That was the first date, technically, that tenants could be evicted. And if you had any additional notice period on your tenancy, you would then add it on from April the 23rd onwards. So, it depends on how long your tenancy lasted for. You can calculate your notice period pending how many years you've held that tenancy for. So as I said, if you have additional notice left out on your tenancy, you essentially add it on from April the 23rd onwards. But there are some exemptions under new legislation that came in January. So, I think a lot of people are like, oh shit, like I'm going to be evicted, like I'm still finding it hard to pay my rent, etc., etc. So these new provisions, I guess, they're under the Planning and Development and Residential Tenancies Act 2020. It does not roll off the tongue very well. They've abbreviated to PDRTA. So the eviction exemptions under the PDRTA apply to tenants up until the 12th of July 2021. So, the eviction ban, the universal eviction ban has lifted, but there are now, I guess, special protections for some people who remain in financial difficulty and are struggling to pay their rent. So how you access those additional supports is you have to show that you are in receipt or entitled to illness benefit for COVID-19 or temporary wage subsidy, any social welfare payments or state support paid as a result of loss of earnings due to COVID-19. So that could include supplementary welfare allowance if you needed to get support for paying rent or anything like that. Because of coronavirus, you may be entitled to apply for the exemptions under the PDRTA. And also you have to show that there is significant risk of losing your tenancy, i.e. that you've gone into rent arrears. So how do you access those supports? I am going to pop myself over here. Or how do you apply for the additional protection? So essentially, you have to fill out a self-declaration form. So that is this form here. Fill this out. On the next slide, I'll show you how to access that form. You send the self-declaration form to the RTB to the address rentarrears@rtb.ie. You can also post it if you want. It's really important to note that in the same correspondence, you have to ask the RTB, can they refer you to MABS for help and support? So MABS are the Money Advice and Budgeting Service. They're a national agency and they are there to help people who are maybe struggling to pay bills or have fallen into rent arrears. So you have to in the email or post have an attachment letter saying that you want this support from MABS and ask the RTB to send a referral. So you then send a copy of your declaration form to your landlord by email or registered post. And then within 5 days of making the declaration, you have to contact your landlord to discuss paying your rent going forward. I think a lot of people, when they come into financial hardship and they're struggling to get money together for rent, the last thing people want to do sometimes is contact the landlord because they're afraid of losing their home or their tenancy being ended. but you need to be seen to come to some kind of arrangement with your landlord to pay the rent if you're in arrears. And you have 5 days to do that from the point of making the self-declaration. So as I said, the 5 steps: you fill out your self-declaration form, send it to the RTB, ask the RTB to refer you to MABS for advice and support, send a copy of the declaration to your landlord, and then within 5 days of making that declaration, you contact your landlord to discuss paying that rent going forward. So where do you find the self-declaration form? It's very simple. It's on the RTB website. So you go into your Google bar, you type in RTB or Residential Tenancies Board, your Google search will come up. You're going to click into the first link. It's usually the first link that pops up, Residential Tenancies Board there. And then when you get onto the RTB website, it has like a toolbar up the top. So it'll be the very top of your screen. You're going to go over to the right-hand side, click Forms, Tools, and Templates, and then scroll down. It's actually, I think, at the bottom of the list. You will see this little icon here, and then you can click Download Self-Declaration Form for Tenants. You can either fill it in on your computer, or you can essentially print it and sign it by hand. But I think you can also fill out on your computer just for ease sake if you want to. Some important points to note is that when you're sending your self-declaration form, you have to show other relevant documentation. So if you're in access of financial supports, you're going to need to show those financial supports. So maybe receipts for PUP payment or receipts for temporary wage subsidy. You could attach a letter from your employer to say that you're on reduced hours, and you send all of that documentation to the RTB and to the landlord at the same time if you send them off your self-declaration. The landlord has to consent to being emailed your self-declaration form. So if you don't have your landlord's email address, send it by post. Any postage either to the RTB or to the landlord should be sent using registered post. Keep your receipt so that you have proof of postage. That's really important for your own records. In addition to having proof of postage, you're obviously going to need to keep copies of your self-declaration form, copies of any emails that go back and forwards between yourself and the RTB, and also any correspondence between yourself and your landlord. Particularly if you've contacted a landlord and you've made some kind of agreement in terms of how you're going to pay your rent arrears back, it would be really important that you would get that in writing. So either if you have copies of text messages or emails, just keep that for your own records because you may need to come back to it later. So if you're eligible for the extended protections, it means that you cannot be evicted from your home until July 13th. So it buys tenants a good bit more time. So the provisions are up until July 12th, but the 12th is inclusive. So it means that you can't be evicted until July 13th, which is really good. A normal notice period for rent arrears is 28 days, but you must be provided, like under the extended protections, your notice period for rent arrears will be 90 days. And that will be applied after July 13th. So you add on 90 days and get your date then. That will be like your notice period. Also, you cannot have a rent increase until July 13th either, because you've showed financial hardship due to coronavirus, and because of that your tenancy is at risk, so it wouldn't make sense for the landlord to be allowed to put up your rent. So that is also blocked under the extended protections, which is amazing. There are some situations where the protections don't apply. So if you're in rent arrears for more than 5 months, you're not eligible for these extended protections. And as I said before, if you don't ask the RTB for MAB support and advice, you will not get these extended protections. When you're emailing the RTB or posting out your self-declaration form, you have to attach a separate notice to say that you want that support from MABs. So where those extended protections don't apply and you're in rent arrears, the normal 28-day notice of termination will basically be given by the landlord. So if you consider the new protection or the extended protections, it will be a 90-day notice, but if these don't apply to you, it will be the normal 28-day notice. Unlike the universal eviction ban, there was no evictions allowed to happen regardless of the landlord's financial circumstances, whereas these new protections take into consideration the landlord's the landlord's financial means. And if the landlord can prove that the lack of rent coming into him, her, or them is creating undue financial hardship on them, well then they essentially can block the tenant from getting these extended protections. So those under the PDRTA, those extended protections will not be given to a tenant if a landlord is saying that he's under undue financial hardship. He, she, or them, because yes. But anyway, there are other resources available to tenants. So like if you're struggling and you want extra advice, like obviously we're here, Icon, this is us. You can drop us an email. On the next slide, I'll have my phone number and also our office number and emails. But we deal a lot with tenancy rights and private rented. So if you have any questions, feel free to throw us to get in contact with us. And then we have Threshold, which is like the national advisory for tenants. They are a really, really good resource. If you have any legal questions, FLAC is also a good point to contact. Citizens Information has a very comprehensible, accessible website. If you have any questions in relation to your tenancy, they have kind of information pages. And it's just really easy, clear language, easy to understand. And then Mercy Law predominantly deal with homeless accommodation and emergency accommodation. So if you're at risk of homelessness, they would also be a really good organisation to get in contact. CATU is the Community and Tenancy Union, and they would be quite good and very experienced in anti-eviction mobilisation. So again, between all these organisations, there is a lot out there in terms of support for tenants. So please don't feel like you're alone, or please don't feel like you don't have anybody to contact. If you're struggling, definitely give one of these a shout. As I said, our website is www.iconnetwork.ie. That's my email there, ashling@iconnetwork.ie. Our office number is 01-836-6890. And the community participation workers number, which is myself, is 083-433-8382. And please don't hesitate to get in contact if you have any queries in relation to this video or general tenancy questions. Our next video will be covering eviction notices and what makes an eviction notice, legal, and what might determine it an illegal eviction notice. So that video should be up next week, so stay tuned. We'll also be doing some more videos on general rights, general tenancy rights, amongst other things. So keep an eye on our Facebook page. We're also on YouTube, and that is where you can access these videos. But for now, I wish you all the best and goodbye.